Deborah, who's going to lead us with a little grounding intention setting, and then we'll begin our conversation with Carmela Bennett. Take it away, Deborah.
Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday with wherever you are. And if the sun is shining, or if it's cloudy, or if the rain is there, or if it's windy, we're just going to say welcome to the day that you are in. And we are so pleased that you are with us. And as we do, before we begin, we're just going to begin with our breath and just bringing ourselves into self and into community together. We may not be together in a room, but we are together sharing this screen right now. So finding yourself in the most comfortable position that is available to you, and taking just the next couple of minutes to let your eyes just rest away from the screen. Just let the lids fall, and to let your eyes just rest from that light, and to tune inside. As your eyes rest down, just notice, do I need to just like loosen anything in my shoulder? How is my jaw? Are my hips feeling tight? Whatever might be present for you, just taking the minute now, just in this moment, to just let not only your eyes rest, but just let your whole self rest for just this moment. Your breath is constant. It is always with you, and it can be a service to you. And so today with our breath, we're going to focus our breath as it comes into our body and fills up our whole abdomen. And we're going to focus that breath on the idea and the image of a wave swelling in the ocean. So as your belly and abdomen expand with the in-breath, imagine in your mind's eye that a wave is swelling in the ocean. And then as you release your breath on the out-breath, that wave comes to shore. So now we have the wave that comes in, the wave that is within us and fills our abdomen. And then we have the release of when the wave surrenders to the shore. And just in your own way, and with whatever image you see, whether it's your perfect beach, whether it's a gentle cascading wave in a river or a lake, whatever wave you see or imagine is perfect. And just now take the next 3 breaths in your own time and in your own way to allow the wave to come in and to fill you up, and then to that same wave to surrender to the shore. Noticing as you sit with the wave coming in and towards you, and the wave that surrenders to the shore on your out-breath. Just checking in with self. Is there any feeling that's been present with me today that I'm only now just acknowledging? Is there any feeling in my body of where tension has been? Is there a knot in my mind that wishes to be untangled? Whatever it is that is become present as we breathe with the wave, just allow it to be. Just allow it to be, acknowledge it. Give it some love. Give yourself some love. Taking in now the biggest, deepest breath you've taken all day, the biggest wave. And then let that wave come to shore as you come to meet us on the screen as we all gather together for our next fearless chat. where today we will feel and connect even more. Welcome, everybody.
Yes. We have this gesture in Fearless Communicators of elevated sparkleation. So we're going to elevate it, sparklate. Deborah, thank you so much for that grounding. I always feel like I'm slightly cheating because I'm always checking to see people coming in to let them into the room. So it's like your eyes are closed and yet they're kind of open as I'm peeking, to let people in. Welcome to Fearless Chat 19, Coronovirus, Anxiety. And it's such an honor to have Carmela Bennett here to be our expert. We started the Fearless Chat series back in almost 80 days ago. I was actually counting how long, no, it was, yeah, it's been almost 70 plus days since we started. We've now had 19 of these, which is crazy. And what we did immediately in the uncertainty of the moment was knowing that we had in our community experts who were thinking about topics that were top of mind that could really make a difference to our community. So we started sourcing from the expertise of the various people in our community, including our first one was what else to do besides washing our hands, right? Then we had Allison Davis talking about sales. We had Amy Noel, who's on the call, talking about how to get shit done. We had, talking about connection. We had someone talking about energy and what to do with all the energy that's happening spiritually, metaphysically in this moment as well. And in the reflection of what's been going on for the past, for some of us, 10, 11, 12, 13 weeks, is what I'm calling the parallel pandemic, which is around mental health, which I feel is something that we're not really talking about. And that's why we created this next 3-part series specifically to address that. And we're calling it Mental Health, Mindfulness, and Spiritual Wellbeing During the Pandemic. I am really excited to have Carmela Bennett as our expert, as our mental health expert. Yes, elevated sparklation. One of the many things, and Carmela is someone new to my community. I actually met her through Amy Noel in a BNI group called Elevate, which is one of, I would say it's like the epicenter of networking in New York City. I mean, it's a pretty magnificent space that they're both a part of. And I was a guest. And I was very struck by Carmela from the beginning. We had a beautiful conversation, and knowing that her approach, both as a psychotherapist and also as a somatic experience embodied leadership facilitator, is the dancing not just between the mind, but the dancing between the mind and the body, and the importance of the dance of those two. So with that as a framework, I'm really excited to have her in this conversation with us. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm in Miami, Florida, and there are thunderstorms, and my internet may be a little in and outy. If there's something that happens, Deborah, I'm going to request that you take over if there's anything that happens. I just wanted to give you that as a background. And with that, Carmela Bennett, welcome to Fearless Chat. Yeah.
Jazz hands. Jazz hands. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. So a little bit about me, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, I've been a psychotherapist for a long, long time. Almost 30 years. I have a private practice in New York City. I did have an office before this pandemic. And now I am doing everything on Zoom from Connecticut, actually. And my trajectory in this field has also been around how to integrate the whole person, the whole body. So I, very young, was drawn to how movement and body change the way we feel and actually how we are. So our way of being. So I've been about learning how to facilitate that for myself and for other people for a really long time. I integrate a mind-body approach into my therapy work. I also teach embodied leadership at Columbia in this very same way, that with the fundamental premise being that the leader you are is the self that you are. So the self, it's about developing the self. So having said that, I'm just going to start by giving you a little bit of a framework to understand why this sorry.
Carmela, I would just love to talk a little about, just to dig in, just because we've had a little bit of a conversation, about what was the defining moment for you? What had you shift to realize that there was a difference, but that the physicality mattered? There was a specific experience in your childhood that I think is important to zoom in on to understand you better also.
Yeah, I was an incredibly shy child. I was so shy that it was really hard for me to speak to people face to face, especially adults. Pictures of me, if you see pictures of me, you can even see it. I was very introverted. Sometimes you can still hear that now. There's that introvert, we don't change a lot of times. We kind of stay with those tendencies, although we can learn into different ways of presenting and being, which is what I've been working on my whole life. But what happened for me was that as that shy child, when I was 7, my parents took me to a production of The Nutcracker for my birthday. And I still remember it. I can see it now. And I remember the curtain opened and there was this light. There were the lights and the music and the movement, the dancing. And I was totally captivated. I was mesmerized by just seeing all this life. And I didn't have language for that then, but what I was seeing was an aliveness, right? That there was an aliveness that was going on in front of me. And I could feel that I wanted that. Whatever that was, I wanted that. And
Can anyone relate to that, by the way? Can anyone relate to that experience? I'm like yes. I think Corey Purdom was a stage manager for many years, so I think her mind, I don't want to say it was like, I wonder how that happens. I want to do that behind the scenes, and you were also a performer. You also perform. You also.
Yes, I do. I started taking dance classes. I asked if I could take ballet classes. And when I was 7, and I had a fabulous teacher who was so kind and gentle and nurturing. And what I experienced in my little 7-year-old body was that I could feel differently. Like I could actually feel bigger. And I spoke up. The movement, the music in the ballet classes, and I just could feel it inside, not having language for it. But it was like, I like this. This feels good. And then, I would leave dance class and go back to the rest of my life, which was, had a different container, right? The container was much different. There was much more structure. My home life was very structured and very much more emotionally shut down. So it was, I also noticed that. It was like, wait, I didn't like the way I felt when I left. So I just started this journey, and I took dance classes. I still take dance classes in New York, and I started to take dance classes. And along the way, I went to New York, and actually after college, and I did the whole gypsy dance thing. And I performed for about 5 years before I got married and had kids. And after that, though, my master's, I got my degree in counseling, and just started to dig into this. It's like, okay, how do we change? How can I change? How can we change from using the body? I worked with kids. I started out working with foster children, doing movement. And the other part of that's especially powerful about movement is that it's nonverbal, right? And so it taps into the nonverbal in a way that's we really need, because so much of the information that's being held within us is nonverbal. It's in fact something like 85% of what we know, quote unquote, right, is nonverbal. It's held in the body. It's the information there.
So beautiful, Carmela. And I feel like this is one of the things that we've been saying a lot, and we say this in our space, and this is something that we've learned from one of our facilitators in Australia. There's a tribe in Papua New Guinea, and what they say is knowledge is only rumor until it lives in the muscle.
Right.
And there's like the knowing of something, and then there's the knowing of something. There's a way in which the body is actually communicating to you something. And it's also generational. Like there are generations of stories that are in our bodies, and there's an opportunity to kind of uncover and discover what that is. Carmela, Lisa just put in the chat, she's been swinging ballroom dancer for 35 years and she loves to dance. So you may find a fellow dancing partner. I think there are a lot of people here who also love to dance. So I also want to encourage people to use the chat function if you have questions or if there's something that's emerging. Carmela is committed to giving us some very practical tools and tips on how to manage anxiety in this context. So if you have questions, please do feel free to generate them into the chat. And I think Carmela, I think we had talked about the context for now felt like where you were going before I interrupted you on, on telling us your personal story. But as someone who has an acute condition of Shotsunitis and a severe musical theater gene, like there was so much of a chorus line that I heard in your story. Like I was singing like at the ballet, like over and over again in my head, you know, as you were sharing that story, and something that I can relate to very personally.
Yeah. Yes. And also, I hope I get it.
Yes. She's got it. God, I hope I get. Okay, we'll deviate. Yeah. Context. What's happening now?
Yeah. So I just want to start out and give everybody a little bit of framework that I think is helpful about why this quarantine is especially difficult for us. By helping you understand, it sounds like actually you guys are familiar with this anyway, but briefly, how human beings are wired and what we're wired for. And as human beings, we're unconsciously hardwired to seek basically two things. So we don't need to go into like the eons of like, oh, it's this and this and this and this. But the two things most fundamental to our survival is safety and connection. So safety and connection, and if you sort of use those as the foundations of the pyramid, and you really kind of go upwards, like everything comes out of there. So right now, both of those fundamental needs are being compromised, right? So safety, where the pandemic is creating a lot of fear. Are we going to get sick? Are we going to lose a job? What's going to happen to our parents? So safety is acutely compromised right now. We can't count on being safe in the ways that we're ordinarily accustomed to. Going to the grocery store isn't safe anymore. So it's how do we find safety? So the other is connection. So we're hardwired as human beings. We need connection. So anybody that tells you, you know, I don't need people, there's something there. That's not, that's always the information there is that's always some kind of reactive strategy, right? If somebody's saying, I don't need anybody, I don't need connection. So the isolation that we're experiencing with social distancing and having to stay at home is really getting in the way of us being able to connect. Yes, we have Zoom, we have technology, and that's helping. It's not the same. So I'm sure you're aware that like seeing somebody on a screen is different than being able to see them in person. It's better than not. So I don't want to mislead you at all. So anyway, we're losing both of these fundamental needs at the same time. And it's a double whammy to our entire nervous system. So if you think about that, the reason that I start with that is that I want to normalize what's going on here so that it's not just, hey, you know what, if I'm reacting to this, there must be something really wrong with me, or, you know, I'm just not as strong as I thought I was. This is really tough. And so recognizing that is really important. And it leads to my first tip, which is acknowledging that this is really stressful. So the more that we resist facing into what is, the more anxious we get. So in other words, acknowledging that, it's like this right now. It's a phrase actually that I teach people. It's like this right now. This is what it is, and it's really stressful. So acknowledging that our normalcy has been disrupted And even under the best of circumstances, change is hard, right? Disruption is not easy. So this kind of stress has been majorly amplified. So acknowledging that this isn't normal stress, whatever normal stress is for you, right? But I also want to give you the message that it's okay to feel anxious, because we get resistant around, when we start to feel anxious, what we can start to tell ourselves is, oh my gosh, there's something wrong, right? And then the more that we say that, the more anxious we get. So saying that there's something wrong, the creating resistance around any emotion, actually, right? Resisting for sadness, right? Sometimes people resist joy, right? So anytime we resist around an emotion, actually we're creating more stress for ourselves. So we want to be able to acknowledge what is. So if you find it really helpful, which I do, and you find yourself in any moment of the day feeling anxious, especially anxious or stressful, to take a breath and let's just try this.
We are totally going to do it, Carmela. I think we were on the same wavelength.
Try it, like, let's sing together. It's like this right now. Try it.
It's like this right now.
Yeah. And notice how that lands within you. Like this right now. There's nothing else that needs to be done. You don't have to do anything. It's like this right now.
I'm wondering, Carmela, is it helpful to also acknowledge it's like this right now and it's very stressful?
Yeah. I mean, that's the same as acknowledging is saying, and it's very stressful, it's okay to feel it. It's okay.
I had this impulse, let's play. This is going to be a total Zoom shit show. And I'm also feeling like network, like I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like just an opportunity to just unmute ourselves and in the shit show that is Zoom, to acknowledge it's like this right now and it's stressful, you know? And let's just say that like 3 times, all collectively. We're going to unmute ourselves. I'm going to unmute everyone. This is going to be a total disaster. Okay, so, or unmute yourselves if you can't. And on the count of 3, we're just going to say, it's like this right now, and it's stressful. On the count of 3, here we go. 1, 2, 3. It's like this right now,
and it's stressful.
It's like this right now, and it's stressful. It's like this right now.
It's like this right now.
And it's stressful.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, mute yourselves again. Mute yourselves again. Ooh, that feels good. We want to hug you too, Lisa.
Isn't it interesting that I see many people are smiling?
Yeah.
Right? So that actually, that was a perfect segue into another one of my tips, right?
Number two, yes.
No, it's number 4 on my list, but I'm going to make it number 2.
Okay, I love it. Yes, we're bouncing around.
So what we want to do is we want to implement cognitive flexibility. What's that mean? Okay. So what it means is that flexibility is the cornerstone of mental health, right? We need to be able to be resilient. And resilience is not a thing, right? It's not a thing out there. And it's not an action, right? It's a felt sense. It's also the ability to, when you feel stressed, to come back, right? So there's that's resilience. Okay, I can get activated and I can come back. So there's the and. So cognitive flexibility is actually it's using and instead of but. That's one way to think about it. The other phrase you can say that is helpful to remind yourself is you can be both. So in other words, you can use that as a mantra, right? That when we encounter difficult feelings, it's sometimes easy to just say, I'm so anxious. I'm really going to freak out. I'm really going to freak out. But what if you were saying, I'm so anxious, and at the same time, I have some time to do things that I couldn't do before. So there's an and. So you can have both. Or I'm starting to freak out about this whole experience, and I'm grateful to be able to have some extra time with my family.
I'm wondering if this is an opportunity for people to just reflect what is an and statement about something they're maybe managing and putting that in the text or in the chat space, like a space where you're managing an experience around anxiety or sadness or anger or something like that, and choosing an and, the being of both. So I am anxious and I'm grounded, or I'm feeling anxiety and I'm supported, or something like that. Does that work, Carmela?
Yeah, what we could also do is we could actually do it. So if everybody would just sort of take a breath and just turn your attention inside and find a place in your body that feels tight. Any place at all that might feel tight, contracted, pressure. Could be some very small, could be the tip of your finger. And now find a place in your body that feels different than that. Find a place that feels softer or slower. If you're having trouble finding that, what you can do is put your attention down into your feet. And notice your feet in contact with the ground. So if you found a tight spot, now you'll be able to find a solid place, something that's tight and a place in your body that's solid. So as you notice that, really, what's it like to notice that actually you can hold both? That at any moment you actually are holding both feelings. It's not just one. It's not just one state. So even as you say to yourself, what's it like to know, hey, you know what? There's this and there's that. Anybody have anything they notice about that you want to share?
I want to acknowledge, Carmela, that there are some things that people have posted in the chat, and then maybe that'll also stimulate someone to raise their hand to share. But Lisa says, I'm missing my friends a lot, and I have more time to listen to music and do my art. Lori, I'm anxious about a job, and I'm recognizing this might be an opportunity to do something brave. I'm anxious about returning from quarantine with my family and excited to sleep in my own bed again. I love that. I miss my friends, and I have so much time to deepen my meditation practice. Yeah. And I felt what was really interesting for me, Carmela, is I felt very tight, like in my right pec chest, like I felt a real tightness there, and yet like expansive in my head.
Yeah.
And I think it's the first time that I've ever felt like I've had an understanding of the feeling, but not like, oh, I'm also holding physically two different sensations in my body at the same time.
Yeah.
And the power of that. So thank you for grounding us into that. Catherine just said, I'm so tired and also so grateful for sunshine and springtime. Yes. And she's in Boulder right now, which is beautiful at this time of the year.
So what's important, I just want to say one last thing about this, because what's really helpful about this, this is almost a foundational practice too, because it is a practice. So when you found yourself getting anxious, you can notice there's this and there's that in my body. And what it does is that's a felt sense of resilience, right? I'm this and I'm that. And this is true for us. We're never just one thing. So it also reminds us that emotions always change. This is not going to stay forever. So if you're anxious at any particular moment, especially at any moment in the day, you can be reassured that this will change.
I love it. And that's a beautiful like mantra. This too, it's like, and this too shall pass. This too will change,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, emotions by virtue of the way that they operate in us, they're not there. They change all the time. Having said that, I do want to say that there are ways to recognize if mental health. There are ways to recognize if something is becoming chronic, and that actually is important to pay attention to. So it's normal, natural to feel sad, to feel anxious. But if you notice that you're starting to feel like, and this will never end, if it goes on, day after day, and you start to feel hopeless and helpless, then there's some information to pay attention to. So I don't want to paint a picture like, that major depression can't happen, because it can.
Yeah.
So if you just start to notice that it's like, okay, this is never going to end, then, then you could reach out. It's a time to reach out.
I think that's a great indicator for oneself. Also, that's really great to be like, wait a second, if I'm clocking that. What I love about this, Carmela, is you're bringing some distinction to like, oh, if I'm tracking that feeling for myself, that despair, like, oh, and this will never stop. I'm feeling this and it's never going to go away. That's a great cue. And also, if you notice that in someone who you love, a colleague, a relative, that's a great indicator to say, maybe this is an opportunity to speak to someone, who may be able to support you.
Yeah.
Are we ready to move on to number 3, Carmela?
I know, I think I'm blurring a few of these together. So number 3, so get space from anxiety triggers. So specifically what that means is the sensationalized repetitive news can often be a number one trigger at a crisis, right? We get, like by a magnet, we get pulled towards it, right? So right now, the information about the pandemic is changing all the time. So it's really important to pull away from it, because the more we get, we're focusing on uncertain and things that are changing all the time, the more anxiety is going to go up. So this is especially important if you suffer from an anxiety disorder, to make space. So you have to get space from triggers that are going to activate you even more. If it's helpful, you could pick like a friend to give you a recap. So you're not like, okay, I'm just going to blind myself. No, ask a friend, hey, what were the highlights? But you're not watching it, you're not listening to it. And as we all know, technology, right, is addicting, literally, right? So the more we watch it, and the harder it is to pull away. So in addition to that,
Carmela, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's like major lightning happening here, and the power is in and out. I've made Deborah co-host. So if for whatever reason I get lobbed off, I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm hearing sounds from technology as things are going and lights are blinking. So Deborah, just so you know, I made you co-host. So if we log off, you can continue and then we can keep on. Okay. Anyway, namaste, feng shui, kickball change, breathe.
Posse. So, in a way, here's a practice that you can use with that. You can actually to narrate your own behavior. So say to yourself and say it out loud is a way to help you step into the next activity. So if you find yourself, okay, when I'm watching the news, or say it out loud, I really want to watch TV, or I really want to find out what's going on here, but I'm going to turn the TV off and I'm going to go wash the dishes or whatever, or go back to work or whatever. So saying it out loud is really the important part. So, let's open a recipe book and find something new to cook for dinner tonight. So, and it's like talking to yourself, right? But just like there's power in writing things down, there's also power in saying them aloud. So you can like shift into the next moment with cleaner energy when you're clear and stating out loud as your communicators, right? So the power of saying this out loud, it's really powerful. So
I love that, Carmela. I love that. And it gives us a perfect excuse to be talking out loud to ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just narrating my behavior and I'm being consciously with my own mental health by speaking out loud and narrating what I'm doing to choose powerfully.
That's right. And you're not a crazy person. You're actually a very resilient person.
Yes, I love that.
Right, right. So where am I? I'm at number 4.
Yeah, I love Amy Noel just wrote, that's me every day. I talk to myself all the time.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yay, Amy.
Yeah.
Number 4 is to be intentional. So being intentional, rather than letting the days blur into another. Has anybody noticed that the time seems to have accelerated, right? Like, it's like, oh my gosh, it's Friday already. Yeah, time is like when we don't have our ordinary structures, times gets blurry, and it feels like it's accelerating. Sometimes people say, well, it's really dragging because I have, nothing to do. But a lot of the people that I'm talking to in my own experience is that time is accelerated because we don't have anything structuring our time like we used to, or some people don't. So you want to create a structure for yourself. Even if you're working from home, right? You want to get up, go to bed, regular hours. You want to have regular meal times. Get dressed every day. It's really funny. I have actually a little friend of mine was talking to their doctor on Zoom, and the doctor said, "Oh, could you get up and I want to see how you're walking." And he said, "I can't," because he was in his underwear. He hadn't put his pants on. He was anyhow, shirt. Anyway, funny. So schedule regular exercise, right? It's really important you exercise your body. That also helps open your mind. So exercising your body, there's a direct correlation between being happy and moving your body. True story. So moving your body actually creates openness and space, which translates immediately to the brain. So, little neuroscience tip, there's actually more nerve endings going from the body to the brain than the brain to the body. So in other words, there's more information flowing up from the body than there is down from the brain. So if you just kind of think about how important that is, right? That our body, when we move our body, it's telling it's giving our mind a lot of helpful information. Oh, it's okay to move. Oh, I'm here, sensing your body. I'm here right now. I'm okay. I'm still here. So intentional. That's number 4. Regular exercise.
Carmela, I want to. So, 2 things that I've noticed. One, I've been very consistent that I work out at noon, and that doesn't budge. Like, that's consistent. And I've noticed that in moments of anxiety for me, and I'm someone who I live with anxiety. So I live with it. Luckily here, I have access to going outside and walking. So having like a mid-evening, like before dinner, like at least 30 minutes of leaving that, because if not, I could be at my table from 8 o'clock after my 12-second commute from my bed to the table, then I'm sitting at the table, and then all of a sudden it's 9 p.m. and I haven't moved, So I think having that opportunity to like get out, even if it's walking for 15, 20 minutes, just to get outside does create a complete shift. I can sense something physical that's shifting, and also mental in that as well as a practice.
It's actually, it's easy. It's much easier because we overvalue our mind so much that we fall into this, like, hey, I'm just going to think differently. Oh, I know when that happens, I'll just think differently. Well, when that happens, when shit happens, you're not able to think differently. So you need to have your body as a resource. So when you start to feel anxious, and if you say, okay, don't be anxious, whatever, that's going to increase the activation. Yeah. So you want to get up and move, right? And that will activate the different parts of your limbic system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and you'll start to actually naturally feel less anxious. So it's easier. We want things to be easy.
It reminds me of what not to do is what my mother does, which is I don't even want to think about it.
That's right.
I just don't even want to think about it. I just don't want to think about it. It's like her mantra, but then all she does is think about it.
Yeah. Well, that's a cue that you're probably thinking about it, right? You want to think about it.
I'm
Yeah.
going to reflect that to my mother today when I talk to her.
Don't think about it. Don't think, move.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I love that. Hashtag don't think, move. Ooh, that's yummy.
Yes.
That's yummy. Pas de bourrée, kick
Yes.
step.
Yes.
Split
Well,
lead.
don't think, feel. Like, that's a song. No, no big deal. Yeah. Anyway, I'm older than you.
Number 5.
5. Remember that where there are risk factors, there are also protective factors. So what that means is the more protective factors you implement, the more you reduce your risk. So rather than just being vulnerable to the risk, we can take active steps. There's also protective factors that we can intentionally create for ourselves. We're doing them all the time now. We're being inundated by messages about washing your hands, restricting contact, all that stuff. But emotional protective factors, right? Including things like staying connected to your support network, right? The things that we're talking about now, creating schedules for your day, prioritizing sleep, using, positive coping skills, all these things, that's creating protective factors in risk. So we don't have to focus just on what there isn't. It's that, kind of that deficit mentality.
Mm-hmm.
What are we creating? This is where I also want to emphasize protective factors for people who, if you have medication, if you have a mental health disorder that you take medication for, you have to take it. Please take it. Get your prescription refilled and make sure that you take it. So this is also protective factor is your own sense of personal agency, right? That you're also taking care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself to be able to take care of others.
Carmela, I have a question for you around that because, with the unemployments the way that they are, people's health insurance is possibly diminishing. I think that sometimes there may be fear of like going to the doctor or having access to a doctor or getting a prescription or getting prescriptions fulfilled. Like, are there support structures for people if they can't afford the medication, if they're not insured? Like, how is that managed?
Those are really good questions. And how about if I send those to you?
Great.
Okay.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
I'm gonna run out of time.
Great. Yeah. I love that.
Okay. So where am I? Number 5, 6?
6.
6. Use music. Music. So music is powerful, and it could be the second most underrated tool to strengthen emotional wellness, behind getting outside, getting sunshine in our face, right? So listening to music makes you feel good. It energizes you. It could also invoke all kinds of emotions in a positive way, right? So even love songs, or they also can we need to feel, right? Get a sense of feeling love. The Queen song that you had, feeling energized. So make a playlist, text some friends to make a playlist together. And it's not an accident that music therapy is a real thing. So
something that I've been tracking. So for the past 30 days, I've been part of this accountability group where I've been singing for 20 minutes a day. And when I stopped performing in 2015, like I basically stopped singing except minor bouts of show tonitis. Yeah. And it was really about an exploration of singing in the purest way, like singing for the love again, as opposed to singing, it's like what I did for love, as opposed to do chorus on again, not to get a job or to be validated, to be approved. And after I made a mixtape on Spotify of my favorite songs to sing, and I would just clock 20 minutes and I would just sing for 20 minutes. It was like an emotional workout.
Yeah.
It wasn't like exercise, but it was like a palate cleanser. So even if it's 5 or 10 minutes of just like full-throated singing in this apartment at the top of my lungs, like I found myself energized. I found myself like, it was a sorbet. It was like a palate cleanser to the day. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, now I'm ready for Western. It tended to be like at nighttime. So then I'd be like, and I'm ready for bed. But
Good
it was
chance
a really powerful tool that I hadn't even considered.
Yeah, and good chance that if you're listening to music, you're gonna move too.
I love
So-
Catherine just said, I've been jamming out to Gregorian chants in the morning and it changes my whole day. It's so peaceful. I love that. That's so good.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And people are having dance parties. Actually, I had my little 2-year-old grandson over here over the weekend, and he was, and they were doing dance parties. They were like, we were putting on kids' music, and he called it a dance party, and it's really fun. So
I'll also share on Fridays, this actual Friday, I'm hosting my big gay virtual sing-along, which is at 5 p.m. and it's singing and dancing at 5 p.m. and we move through ABBA and Queen and show tunes and Disney and we get all in our bodies and it's super, super yummy. Yes.
all right, number seven. So socialize in a new way. Right? So we're back to that, that need for connection. So we're social creatures and we seek and thrive on connection with others. Loneliness has always been shown to have negative effects on mental and physical health. And the isolation of the quarantine increases the potential for alienation and loneliness. So fortunately, even though the ways of connection have changed, they're not gone. So there are lots of resources that you can channel to help the self-quarantine without isolating. We've talked about some of the obvious ones. We're doing one now, right? You can't go over to a friend's house, but you can try some new ways to socialize. People are doing all kinds of innovative things. Group video chats. You can actually create one of your own too. You can create your own group, you create your own movement. Working out with my daughter is in California and she asked me to do a yoga class together with her. And so stuff like that, you can do all kinds of things, but it's really important for your mental health to socialize and to, if you have somebody, a family member or a friend, or somebody or even a neighbor in your building that is especially isolated, reaching out to them will also make you feel real good. Right? It's going to get those endorphins flowing to connect and help create connection for others. So it's a win-win. So not only socializing with your friends, but really reaching out to those people who has lost connection even more than you may have.
Number 8.
Yeah.
Wow.
For number 7, it's really a really interesting data point that I learned is that actually online dating has increased during the pandemic. So there's more people going on line than ever before, and I think in a really cool way. It's like what a great way to get to know somebody by like actually having to talk to them. Right? You talk to them before you meet them. So anyway, number 8. Activation anxiety is a thing. So activation anxiety is about using the anxiety to activate the parts of yourself that you enjoy, you love, or you want to see more of, right? So for example, if you love how thoughtful you are, use the anxiety as a cue to reach out to somebody, like I just said, somebody who needs company, or an elderly couple, or a person. If you're good at getting organized, channel your anxiety into like, okay, cleaning up that closet. If you love cooking, use your anxiety to activate how you could make a new recipe or do something. But I think you get it, right? So not focusing on anxiety as a negative, it's an energy. The other way to consider anxiety, it's an energy. You can feel the energy, right? So how can you use it? So we can use the activation anxiety in positive ways versus getting into a freeze, right? Into freeze mode. It's like, I'm just so anxious. I'm just so anxious. So as we talked about, we could use the and. I'm anxious and I'm going to go reach out to a friend. I'm anxious and I'm going to go do something else. So that's my 8. I do have one more.
Yes, I love a bonus. I love a bonus.
Bonus, and we've been talking about this, but there's an intention here too, is to check in with yourself. So checking in with yourself is that, and actually I find it helpful to schedule this in. So, at the top of the hour, check in. Hey, what's going on with me? So this is that opportunity for you to see what it is, what's there. Irritable, cranky, anxious, content. Just see what is. So, and there's your opportunity to say, it's like this right now. Right now, I'm really anxious. And what could you do, right? So checking in with yourself gives you the capacity, the ability to do the things that we've just been talking about in a more structured way. So we tend to again, as I said, we tend to overvalue what we're thinking. Checking in with yourself is about noticing how you're feeling, and noticing whatever the sensations are is a really helpful way to get access to that. So sensations are emotion. So if you notice, like, okay, there's this tingling in the back of my head. Oh, I know. You know what? I'm really worried about that I didn't do that project, or what's going to happen with my job. So checking in with yourself, you can check in the sensations, check in what you're thinking, do the reframe, check in with how you're feeling, and use other people, connect with other people as a way to get feedback.
Carmela, do you recommend doing that check-in out loud for yourself, like at the hour, or instead of saying, okay, so I'm checking in with myself, it's 3 o'clock, I'm feeling joyous. Just just in that practice again of acknowledging out loud the feeling, as opposed to it being an intellectual conversation. I think the practice of doing that check-in orally out loud, I think may be helpful. I never thought about that before, but I love that as a tool.
Yeah. Well, writing it down.
Yeah.
You could write it down, and at the end of the day, woo, you have this whole hey, what went on with me today? And it's not just what you actually did, but how you were feeling. It's very helpful.
How do you feel about, for teams, one of the things that we do on all our Fearless Communicators calls, or whenever we gather, is we always start off with a celebration. What's one thing you're celebrating? Before we activate into conversation. And I'm also part of a group where we do check-ins before we come in to the conversation to say, hi, right now I'm feeling, upset, or I'm feeling angry. This is something there's nothing that will prevent me from being present on this call, or there's an ability to acknowledge your ability to be fully present or not be fully present. And this is something I'm celebrating, and now I'm in. But it's this great ritual, maybe in managing teams or in community, to just also acknowledge that we're feeling beings, we're human beings, and how do we navigate that conversation in community?
Absolutely. Hugely important. The check-ins, when I teach the embodied leadership class, it's how we start every class. So we actually go around, it's how are you feeling? But it's not, I'm feeling it's, I feel, right? So there's being mindful that I feel is usually not a feeling. It's usually a thought, right? So what can be really helpful is to go online and just Google feeling lists and print one out. And it'll be amazed, right? That oh my gosh, yes. When we have language is really powerful. So when we can identify what it is we're feeling, we feel much less anxious automatically. Even if you're feeling anxious, what we can name, we can change, right? If you name it, you can change it. So it's really helpful to be able to identify what it is. So
I love that, Carmela. I think that's a game changer I think to bring that into work culture, with teams, acknowledging that this is all something that we're dealing with, to even, and that the language around feelings may be not common for people to print out a list, for people to have the space to say, this is my name, this is how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm in, and that there's no judgment around the feeling. You know, it's just like a space to share that I feel like is really powerful.
It is, and developing a language around it is really empowering. It's a skill that we have lost, you know, because we tend to talk in generics: happy, sad, glad, you know, pissed off, angry, whatever, you know. But there's the qualities, right? The distinctions that when we see the language of feelings, the distinctions are really, really important. Because is it sadness or regret? Right. Is it, and there's a real difference, right? There's a qualitative difference in what that feeling is, how it feels inside, and what it means to us.
Yeah.
So the nonviolent communication, absolutely. I love their stuff. They're doing, they have an online course going on right now. Nonviolent communication really helps people identify feelings, needs, and emotions. They have lists of feeling words.
That's
so
awesome.
you can Google them.
So Carmela, thank you so much. Elevated Sparkulation for this conversation. Yes. What we'll do is we'll source through and we'll actually put the 8 on the email that we send everybody so that they have those too. And what's the best way for people to follow you or be in communication with you, Carmela?
You can go on my website, which is www.mynamecarmelabennett.com. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, but I have to admit to being a social media dinosaur, and I don't use it as much as I should. So you can just contact me directly by email. And my phone number is also on my website. So
awesome.
I'd be happy to hear from anybody. You can, if you want to consult, you can go to my calendar, is on my signature line, or it's on my website, and you can book a complimentary 30-minute consult.
So generous.
You can just talk.
Awesome, I love that. And we put the website in the chat. We'll also send that in the email along with your LinkedIn so people can connect with you there. Carmela, on behalf of Fearless Communicators, we just want to thank you so much for leading this conversation. It was really beautiful and so powerful and so practical, which is so useful. Practical is awesome.
It's got to be practical.
Thank you all for joining us for Fearless Chat 19. Our next one is around mindfulness with Jonathan Omida. And then after that, we have Kate Ekman doing our full spirit workout. It's going to be how we work out our spirit. So it's like cardio for your spirit, crunches for your spirit, not in a religious way, in a quote unquote spiritual way. And with that, we have a way in which we wrap up our sessions here. So if you're able to hold on for 2 more seconds. Bye, Amy. We see you and thank you. Brian says, thank you so much for this gift on Tuesday that feels like a Monday during a pandemic. Absolutely. So the way that we end here is with this minor little ritual that we have. So we can unmute ourselves, and it's very simple. We're going to go through and we're just acknowledge each other. So I'm going to model it, and then we're going to go through. So Corey Purdom, I see you and thank you. And now you get to say that to somebody else.
Deborah Driscoll, I see you and I thank you.
Lisa, I see you and I thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Eduardo, I see you and I thank you.
Thank you. Ruby, I see you and I thank you.
Deborah, I see you and I thank you.
Lisa, I see you and I thank you.
Didn't quite hear it.
Lisa.
Oh, again, okay.
So we have Gladys and Carmela. Gladys and Carmela have not been acknowledged yet.
Gladys, I see you and I thank you.
Do I say it?
I'm not sure if Gladys is there.
Deborah.
Oh.
Deborah,
Yes, that's
I
me.
see you and I thank you.
Thank you, Gladys. Carmela, I see you and I thank you so, so, so much on behalf of our whole community for everything that you have gifted us today. I know I said extra, but you deserve extra. I see you and I thank you.
And Carmela, you get to see and thank all.
I see you and I thank you all, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.